Hello everyone. I am tired of the Xbox layout and controllers. All of them are more or less the same, with a few changes in the visuals. So today we're gonna review two controllers with unconventional ergonomics. The first one is the Xiaomi Gamepad Elite, and this one has a very unique shape. It also comes with a smartphone clip and a dedicated app. The other one is the Thunderobot G45 Pro. The box doesn't say it's the Pro model, but it is. Let's start with the Xiaomi Gamepad Elite. In the box you get the controller, then there's the smartphone clip, and a manual. There is no cables in the box. Taking a look at the ergonomics, we can see that the grips are much more rounded, very different from the usual Xbox shape. And the material on the plastic is very nice too. It's not a soft touch material, but it has a nice texture. The face buttons won't sync flat with the shell, and they have mechanical switches. The D-pad has a plastic shaft, and there's anti-friction rings. The D-pad also has mechanical switches, and it doesn't seem to be removable. The shutter buttons have mechanical switches, and we have analog triggers. Now, the angle of the shutter buttons and triggers is a bit weird. They are angled more inwards than outwards. Comparing with another controller, you can clearly see the difference. So when you hold this controller, it definitely feels very weird, the positioning of the buttons. But it's not really that bad, it's just different. The back buttons looks and feels very nice. They're very easy to press in any region, and they're shaped exactly like your finger. Your middle finger sits comfortably on top of it, and it's very easy to press. This door here on the back is for storing the controller dongle. The dongle is stored inside the controller, and I like this a lot. You'll never lose your dongle, and whenever you need it, you already know where it is. Testing the face buttons though, they feel a bit harder to press, and the B button especially feels a bit cramped. If you pay attention here, you'll see that there's not much space for my thumb to move around. In other controllers there's more space and it feels more comfortable. And I took my tool to measure the tension of the buttons, and it's definitely much harder. The tension of the sticks is about the same. The D-pad is a bit hard too. Checking the smartphone clip, it fits only on this controller. And there's just one angle of adjustment, but it will hold your phone very well. When turning it on, there's 4 connection modes. And you can cycle between them by tapping the 3 bars button. In the Bluetooth mode, it works just fine with smartphones. But the triggers will be digital only. And the back buttons are mapped to the L1 and R1 buttons. And I tried all sorts of button combos, but I couldn't remap them. There's this Xiaomi app, which is only available in Chinese, and it's a bit hard to get. We can see here that it can detect the controller. I tried to configure a game to test the controller, and this option here is to change between the touch mapper mode and the native mode. But the touch mapper mode simply didn't work. Even after setting the buttons correctly, I couldn't control the menus. And it's definitely some compatibility problem, because the app can detect the controller inputs, as you can see here. In the settings, I could see a firmware update, but I couldn't make it work. Testing on PC with a dongle, there is an X input mode, and here the analog triggers works just fine. Testing the stick, the center dead zone is pretty small. There's no cardinal snapping, and there's no outer dead zone either. The circularity is pretty good. But the resolution is just terrible, with only 60 steps. The vibration also works, and the motors are not rotary motors. It's some different variant of the HD rumble here. You also have a D input mode. And on this mode, the triggers works both as an analog and a digital button. The back buttons though works as the same buttons as the shoulder buttons. Checking the D-pad, the diagonals are not easy to press, but not too hard either. And the input is very consistent. The downside is that the switches are not very tactile. They're more silent, but you cannot distinguish very well when the buttons are registered. Moving to the teardown, there are 2 screws on the bottom. But after trying a lot, I couldn't get this controller to open. It seems to have some hidden screws somewhere, but I cannot find it. and trying to open it further will probably damage the controller. And usually if a controller is not repairable by the user, there's no point on trying to do a teardown. The repairability score of this controller is 0. Now let's check the Thunderobot G45. In the box you get a USB Type-C cable. Here's a look at the manual. The USB dongle is pretty big. And we have the G45 Pro. The grips here are rounded too, and it's a bit thicker than the Xiaomi Gamepad Elite. And different from the Xiaomi controller, the rightmost button doesn't feel cramped. The sticks have a metal shaft, and it has anti-friction rings. They're also removable. The D-pad is mechanical, and it doesn't seem to be removable. And it also has RGB lights. The switch in the back can be used to change modes. If you flip it, the controller will turn off. The shutter buttons uses mechanical switches, and we have analog triggers. The back buttons here are easy to press. And they're perpendicular to your middle finger. I feel that the position of the Xiaomi controller is a bit better. The sticks has the default tension of 60 grams force. And the face buttons here are also much better. The D-pad too is a bit lighter. And the RGB lights looks great. By pressing the light button and different face buttons, you can access different light modes. Pressing the light button by itself will change the colors. Here's how it looks in a dark environment. And finally, if you don't like the RGB lights, you can turn it off. This controller can wake up the Nintendo Switch. And it has motion controls. It can also read amiibos. There's no HD rumble, sadly. Testing on PC, holding Start and Select lets you change between all of the different input modes. Checking the analog sticks, there is a bit of a dead zone in the center. There is no cardinal snapping. There is a tiny outer dead zone too. And the circularity is perfect. The resolution is pretty impressive, with around 1000 steps. The D-pad is also great. The diagonals are easy to press and it's super consistent. You can hit all 4 switches physically, but the internal firmware of the controller blocks all 4 directions to be activated. The back buttons are very easy to remap and configure. You can record button presses, button combinations, and macros. But the macros won't record the analog stick movements. There is a turbo mode and you can change the turbo speed. The triggers are very precise and the dead zone is pretty small. You also have access to the Keylinker app to customize the button configurations and the stick settings on the go. Through the app, you can also change the color to a different color variation than the presets. Moving to the teardown, there's only 6 screws and you can remove the back shell easily. Here we can see the back buttons and the back button switches. The battery has 6000 milliamps. And the analog sticks are on this outer board. They should be super easy to replace if you need to. This small rubber is here to dampen the noise of the button presses. And sadly, we can already see that the trigger pivots is not made of metal. Removing this board reveals the 2K silver Hall effect sensors. On the other side of the board, we have KO switches for the buttons. And here's another look at the triggers. The pivot is made of plastic, so with repeated presses, this metal spring can cut through this pivot and if this happens, the trigger will be unusable. Here's the switches for the menu buttons. And the D-pad switches. Here's the construction of the D-pad, and looking close to it, it seems to be removable. And indeed it is removable, but I would advise to not attempt to remove this D-pad because the tab seems to be fragile, and if they break, you won't be able to insert it back. Checking the buttons, the button layout is fixed and cannot be changed. Moving to the final thoughts, the Xiaomi controller is a big letdown. The face buttons have a high tension, the back buttons cannot be customized, and it only works well on PC with a dongle. If you try to use it with a Bluetooth connection, you won't have analog triggers. The touch mapper functionality doesn't work, and the app is only available in Chinese. The stick's resolution is also very poor. On the other hand, the Thunderobot G45 Pro is much better. The buttons feels much better overall. Changing between platforms is super easy, and it has D input, X input, and Switch input. It also has gyro controls and NFC reader for the Nintendo Switch. The back buttons are much easier to configure, it has RGB lights, and the stick's performance is very good too. Not to mention it is easier to open up and repair. In the end, the Thunderobot G45 blows the Xiaomi Gamepad Elite out of the water. It's the better option if you're looking for a different controller without the Xbox shape we see every day. And that's it for today's video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.